Hello again from the People's Lawyer channel. It's now 2024 and we are staring down the barrel of many totalitarian measures across the board that will threaten our well-being in lots of different ways. So my response to this is to put some information out under the banner Building Resilience to Navigate the Apocalypse, Purple Pilling. What do I mean by apocalypse? Well, apocalypse is just the revealing of truth, the unveiling of all the lies that sustain the matrix. And purple pilling is simply a way of putting those truths into context. So using the matrix analogy, the blue pill is swallowed by the gullible mainstreamers who are not really thinking clearly for whatever reason. The red pill is taken by those who are prepared to look deeper behind the lies and look for some truth. And the purple pill is taken by those who are prepared to dig even deeper, self-reflect, and reflect on everything and come up with bigger pictures than those who are simply taking red pills. Today is part one. We're building resilience and starting with myth busting. Conspiracy theory. Well, is there such a thing as conspiracy theory? If you look at the words from the autobiography of David Rockefeller, let's have a look at what he said in his autobiography. Quote, "Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and with conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, one world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it." End of quote. Now, if that isn't a confession that a global or globalized conspiracy is in operation and has been for hundreds, if not thousands of years, then I don't know what is. What that means to me is that there is no conspiracy theory, there's only conspiracy fact. Have you heard of ICLEI? I-C-L-E-I. And this is a good example, in my opinion, of conspiracy theory not being accurate. It's actually just plain old conspiracy. Well, ICLEI stands for International Council for Local Environmental Issues. They have their own website, which is www.iclei.org, and they are basically a branch of the United Nations. So they are an agency, non-governmental agency, whose remit is to take United Nations sustainable goals and insert them into local policy via local councils. So basically, this is glocalism. It's global policy applied locally. For anyone who tells you that your council is simply adopting sensible policy, green policy, climate-friendly policy, or whatever, it isn't coming from the council, it's coming into the council from funding provided by the United Nations through the channel of ICLEI. More myth busting, school education and school socialization. These are both contradiction in terms. School education is a complete myth, as I wrote about that in my book, School No Place for Children. If you look at this scanned copy of a page from a book from CGP Press, which provides revision information for GCSE, for children at school, you'll see that it covers the germ theory. So we're on medical matters. And if you look closely, you'll see that when it says thinking historically, it reveals the germ theory. Notice theory, not fact. And B, smallpox vaccination. This is indoctrination. Where is terrain theory? And where is the evidence that, in fact, all diseases, all so-called communicable diseases, were almost eradicated completely simply by improved hygiene and sanitation? The children in school are not being told the full story. And in fact, Pasteur on his deathbed admitted that he was wrong. We have all kinds of theories which are no more than that and have been continually debunked. If you want information about debunking, you can find it in my earlier seminars or webinars, in the disclosure webinars of 2021, 2022, and 2023, and in the work of Spacebusters and Dr. Sam and Mark Bailey, Doctors Sam and Mark Bailey, Dr. Tom Cowan, Andy Kaufman, Stefan Lanka, etc., etc. And it's not just medical matters where children are being misled. If you look at climate change, you can see that the records that they use go back to the 1850s. And so they're really narrowing down the remit for children, because if you go back far enough, you'll know that we are in an ice age, that the Earth was much hotter than it is now. So this global warming crisis is nonsense. And if you look at the bottom of the page, you can see where it says, learn the evidence for climate change. There were no thermometers 2.6 million years ago, but scientists can reconstruct climates using these clever methods. See how the children are encouraged to think that scientists are clever. Climate change is a hot topic. A little pun on the word hot. So make sure you learn this stuff inside out before your exam. After the age of 7, we only learn by repetition. So when we learn something called swatting for exams, we are being indoctrinated. We are repeating the learning. The learning is inaccurate and fraudulent, and we are therefore being led into groupthink, dangerous groupthink, which then allows the politicians to manipulate society in a way that suits the globalist agenda. And this is not conspiracy theory, because as we've already pointed out, it's simply conspiracy fact. Moving on to the topic of the contradiction in terms known as school socialization. If you look at this picture of a school, you'll see that it does look like a prison. You've got very high fencing. In schools now in the UK, schools are using fencing that you cannot even see through. They're actually walls. How can you socialize when you are imprisoned? You are in a boot camp. There are so many things you're not allowed to do, including talk and socialize during class time. And there's very little time now in playtime to even socialize. And if you consider that a lot of the school children are so stressed that they start intimidating and bullying each other. It's not just class time where there's no opportunity, it's the playground. A lot of children are hiding from each other in the playground. Repeating a theme that is discussed in my book, when you compare the social skills of home-educated boys and girls with the social skills of schooled children, it's chalk and cheese. Home-educated children are confident, happy, resilient, sociable. Schooled children, on the whole, with the odd exception, are unhappy, stressed, antisocial, frightened of adults, and basically, many of them are on medication. 1 in 6 are clinically depressed or anxious, and 1 in 10 of older teenagers have ideated or attempted suicide. Are you aware of classroom resets and SEL in schools? SEL is social and emotional learning. This is embellishing the idea that schooling is no place for children, basically, and no more than an indoctrination and humiliation center. Resets are now used to encourage children to take punishment and see it as something positive. What we used to call discipline and punishment, cruel discipline in many cases, is now being referred to as reset. Children go home proud to boast that they have been reset. This is, of course, grooming them for a wider global reset, changing their mind about all kinds of things. Social and emotional learning is also a form of grooming where you dig deeper into the psyche of the boy or girl, put in all kinds of thinking, emotional strategies, control mechanisms to make them fit in, to make them fit the school model better, and to make them more manageable and pliable and controllable, and to make them not want to stand out or to disrupt in any way. And it's basically to medicalize individuality. It's to demonize and medicalize and humiliate individuality. So this is really the globalist, socialist, totalitarian, neo-Marxist agenda being rolled out in schools, and it has been rolled out for some time now, but it is becoming an international emergency. As Bertrand Russell once said, men are born ignorant, not stupid. They are made stupid by education. Well, what I would add to that is that it's not just stupid. It really is not stupid. It's obedient, compliant, and anesthetized to truth and individuality. This is dangerous. If you have an anti-human depopulation agenda, you start at school to make that agenda easier to roll out, because children are being brought up not to question anything and to accept everything. Total gullibility. That makes the depopulation and population control agendas much, much easier to roll out. Let's have a look at some pandemic myth busting now. Are you familiar with this timeline? 1989, they called it the Russian flu. It was, in fact, the electrification of railways and domestic lighting. 1918, they called it the Spanish flu. It was, in fact, the rollout of radio and radar. 1957, they called it the Asian flu. It was, in fact, the rollout of microwave. 1968, they called it the Hong Kong flu. It was, in fact, the rollout of low Earth orbit satellite. 2003, they called it the swine flu. It was, in fact, the rollout of 3G technology. 2010, they called it H1N1 flu. It was, in fact, the rollout of 4G technology. 2019, they called it the COVID flu. And it was, in fact, the rollout of 5G technology on trial in places like Wuhan and northern Italy. What's going on here? Well, we have a myth, which is flu, and we have a reality, which is technology. And we'll explore those in greater detail later on in this part and in other parts of building resilience. Let's have a look at some medical myth busting. We've heard a lot about mRNA. Now, they say that mRNA is messenger RNA that can be inserted via injection to change human DNA. My personal belief is that that is not possible, certainly not in 2024. But what could be happening is that they are inserting, they're also dropping from the sky, nanoparticles, and mRNA could stand for molecular recognition nano antenna. And if you look at the next screen, you can see that these nanoparticles are causing all kinds of damage to the system, and therefore symptoms that are associated with things like infectious disease. I'm not going to go into any depth because this is about building resilience. If you wish to do your due diligence and discover more about this, I would recommend you do that. And if you find that I'm wrong, let me know. Now let's look at some key questions to expose some big lies. And remember what Goebbels said, the propaganda minister from Nazi Germany: the bigger the lie, the easier it is for people to swallow it as a blue pill. So the bigger the lie, the easier it is to convince people. Question 1. What do cancer and viral infections have in common? In a word, parasites. Now, I'm not saying that parasites cause disease, but when parasite infestation is out of control, and we'll look at how that happens shortly, then your body needs to build walls against these parasites, and those walls can become tumors. So in my opinion, there is a link between parasites and cancer or cancerous tumors. We therefore no longer say infected. Instead, more reliably, more accurately, we could say infested. Another question, what actually is a war on viruses and a war on terror? This is revisiting a theme from a previous lecture. A war on a virus, or the war on viruses, in effect, is a war on us because we are made up of viruses. We are viruses. They are the microorganisms called exosomes that organize the cleanup of cellular toxicity. When toxicity invades the cell, when we're poisoned, such as through chemtrailing or taking injections or eating bad food, drinking bad water, when we are poisoned, our viruses, known as exosomes, go into the cell and pull out the poison, pull out the toxin. That creates dead cell debris, which are then eaten up by our germs, our bacteria, that then in effect act as road sweepers, if you like, taking away the debris, and then we sweat it out, we defecate it out, we urinate it out, etc. So the war on the virus is in effect the war on humanity. So when they said stop the spread, that was their way of saying stop people from populating the planet. So stop the spread means stop people from procreating. And in a word, that means sterilizing humanity. The war on terror, well, if you have an agenda which is based completely on lies, then you become a terrorist by telling the truth. So domestic terrorism is people born here who are living here and telling the truth, exposing the lies. Those are the new domestic terrorists. They are now being subjected to prosecution for hate speech and hate crimes, but they're simply telling the truth. Yes, if you do it in a very volatile, emotional, provocative way, you are running the risk of prosecution. There are ways and means of speaking the truth, getting the truth out there that are safer than others. And I would recommend the safe route because there's no need to be imprisoned. You can get the truth out in ways that are not illegal. Let's have a look at some climate myth busting. What is the real problem with atmospheric carbon? Well, it's pretty obvious. We need more. We need more carbon dioxide. I sometimes wonder whether they're confusing carbon dioxide, which is the gas of life, and confusing that with carbon monoxide, which is genuinely toxic. Carbon dioxide you can't have too much of. We currently have about 400, just over 400 particles per million, and we desperately need 1,000. And in an ideal environment, we have 2,000 particles per million. Carbon dioxide is the food for plants. Plants breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that that is the cycle of life on this planet. Therefore, we urgently need more carbon dioxide, not less. In fact, we have the lowest atmospheric carbon levels for 600 million years. And if they go much lower, plants and trees will start to suffer. And at the level of about 150 to 200 particles per million, plants start to die. And when plants and trees go, we go pretty soon after. What they mean by climate is in fact weather. We have anomalous weather patterns. We can debate till the cows come home about how those anomalous patterns are being produced. Yes, there could be solar activity, it could be chemtrailing, geoengineering, you name it, but it's strange weather. A weather that sees the top of Ben Nevis in the middle of July 2024 registering -2 in the middle of summer. And we have a summer that is in fact more like a mild winter right now in the UK. Question 4, what is 5G? Well, the blue pillars think it's all about faster downloads. Let's have a look what the red pill or the purple pill suggests. Well, it's fifth generation military grade warfare. We know that the water is poisoned, the food is poisoned, the environment is poisoned, and information is toxic because they keep the truth from you. And worse than that, they put lies into a nice little neat school package and indoctrinate children. And worse than that, they test them on that information and they have to take it home and swat it. 5G is also non-invasive neuromodulation. So they have technology that allows them, they've had TVs for 80 years, affects our brain function. It sends out low-level frequencies from 2 to about 102 hertz that in fact affect our thought patterns. And if they want us to be depressed or to think negative thoughts, to go into fear mode, that's all they need to do. So this is not cooking or frying humanity. This is non-invasive neuromodulation, which used to be called mind control. They also have magnetoelectric nanoparticles, like the microscopic antennas, nano antennas, made up of these nanoparticles, which fall from the sky and which are injected into our blood and also put on swabs. And graphene oxide is now being found all over the place, in the food chain, in swabs, in water, you name it, and of course in particles that drop from the sky. Also dropping from the sky and in vials, injection vials, are artificial nanoparasites. Well, actual parasites, microparasites, and nanoparasites, all different shapes and sizes. Again, this could be what is causing the so-called turbo cancer. If you inject parasites into the bloodstream, then they will mimic cancer and in fact metastasize instantly all over the body. 5G is also cognitive warfare. I'm really summarizing here. It's essentially cognitive warfare. The Third World War is in effect a war on the mind. Well, it's a war on the mind, body and soul, but more obviously a war on the mind, especially with all the fear porn, but the rollout of technology that affects our thought patterns. They're also constructing something called the Bluetooth Low Energy Mesh Network. You have AI chips in more and more devices. Those AI chips will, in effect, talk to each other. Devices in the future will have constant conversation going on, in effect, a global snitch mechanism that will spy on you, that will make calculations, that will control your movements and your thoughts, and no need whatsoever for internet connection. This network will be autonomous, it will be self-sufficient, and that's how Bluetooth works. You don't need an internet connection for Bluetooth. And this mesh network, run by and for AI, will in effect be the Antichrist, in my opinion. It's the rollout of something that goes against nature, controls humanity, and puts humanity, in effect, in a forever cage, in a forever prison. Another question, what do the following have in common? HIV/AIDS, foot and mouth disease, climate crisis, COVID, flu, transhumanization, mRNA technology, PCR tests. Well, they are all based on computer models and all utter nonsense, fake, fakery, artificial, manipulated data that bear no relation to the reality of life on Earth as we know it. And we know how dangerous manipulations can be. And the threat to humanity is not the globalist agenda as such, or the globalists as such. It's the gullibility of the masses. It's the groupthink. It's the fact that they fall for these lies. That is the existential threat. Another question, what parts of the brain are found to be damaged in most people and what are the implications? Well, most people have got their pineal gland damaged, which means that they have their connection to higher realms, higher dimensions, higher truths, higher quality downloads, compromised or absolutely sabotaged. In other words, in a nutshell, they are spiritually compromised. The amygdala is where we feel. It's the emotion center. So if their amygdala is toxic or sabotaged, then their emotions are skewed. Everything then becomes more about fear, less about joy, more about anger, less about tranquility, peace, and acceptance. And if you take the amygdala, you process thoughts through the feeling center and you process them into the hippocampus. If the hippocampus is damaged, as suggested by the research of Michael Males, a German doctor and scientist, then what you have is the ability to create a twisted, distorted reality via your prefrontal cortex. See the work of Gary Brecker. He will elucidate, he will extrapolate, he will expand on what I'm just saying now. Basically, we have compromised brain function, sabotaged brain function, which is producing sabotaged, manipulated realities. We are the creators of our own reality. And when our brains are sabotaged, which they have been by injections, education, schooling, and fear porn, gossip mongering, toxicity across the board, then we are in effect co-creating a distorted, twisted reality that fits the globalist model much better than the one that we would ideally create if we were fully functional. This is the existential threat as well. Another question designed to dissolve, to challenge the narrative. What did Otto Warburg achieve in 1931? Well, believe it or not, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for curing cancer in 1931. Just let that sink in. 1931. What happened next was that he was then targeted, assassinated, and then we have in 1939 the Cancer Act, which prohibited anyone touting cancer cures. You could go to prison, as David Noakes did recently and Linda Thayer. They went to prison for offering their cancer curing services. Now, in an ideal world, we don't even have cancer, because in an ideal world, we're not toxic. We don't have parasitical infestation. But even if, until further notice, cancer is a problem, then you just remedy it quietly. You don't say anything. If you found a remedy for it, you do it quietly and privately, and you won't fall foul of their so-called law, which is in fact just corporate policy. And if you want to know more about how to operate in the private safely without threat of prosecution, then please consider doing my Privacy and Universal Rights online course, The People's Lawyer, Privacy and Universal Rights online course, which is a link on the peopleslawyeruk.com website. Another question, do you still believe in vaccines to fight infection? Well, as you can see from this graphic, infections were being reduced and almost disappearing before the rollout of vaccines. This is true for all kinds of vaccines, and even for so-called infectious diseases where there was no rollout of vaccines, like scarlet fever. The incidence of infection, so-called infection, I would say infestation, of course, was reducing naturally through improved sanitation and improved hygiene. The key to health is good nutrition, good hygiene, good sanitation. And then you don't get a buildup of toxins, of germs, bacteria, everything flows. When you're in flow, whether it's your life or your environment, there is no disease. Where there is flow, there is no disease. Disease is a symptom of some form of stagnation. Another question, do you still believe in infection at all? Well, what we're finding, what the true scientists have found, or the naturopaths, if scientists are bought and sold, which many of them are, that the so-called illness or disease that is allegedly infectious, like mumps or measles, rubella, chickenpox, shingles, polio, rotavirus, pneumonia, are in fact various deficiencies. Vitamin deficiencies, vitamin B for mumps, vitamin A for measles, A and D for chickenpox and shingles, etc., etc. The same is true for pneumococcal disease, vitamin A and D. Tetanus is vitamin A. We also have HPV, which is vitamin B, C, and zinc deficiency. The unsuccessful history of virus and microbe theories. There was always something to blame in the past. So they blamed something, an enemy. Remember that the history of humanity is the history of warfare. People always wanted a stranger or an enemy to blame. But in fact, when we take responsibility, and this is now purple pilling full on, when we take responsibility, we realize that in fact, we have not eaten enough of the right things. We've not got enough fruit or vegetables, so we're vitamin C deficient, and that creates scurvy. Or we don't take enough folic acid in its appropriate form, so we're vitamin B deficient. Or in the case of syphilis, we have been poisoned by mercury or arsenic. Again, that would have come through injections because they use thimerosal in the injections, in many injections. Focusing on cancer. Cancer, they used to say that cancer was the result of promiscuous sexual activity, and they also blamed herpes viruses, papilloma virus. But could it be, in fact, chromosome alteration, possibly from smoking, possibly from injections, from all kinds of bio-warfare, which I've called 5G war on humanity, fifth generation military-grade warfare on humanity. And cancer in the 1970s and 80s, they started to say it was a virus or a retrovirus. Well, those of us who expound terrain theory, terrain reality, know that there is no such thing as a virus. When the governments were asked to prove the existence of coronavirus, not one government across the world could do it. Viruses are a computer model and only exist basically in artificial form, but not in the real world. What cancer could well be is the result of malnutrition, toxicity, stress, deficiency. That is also true of AIDS. AIDS was malnutrition, not a retrovirus. It was the result of poor lifestyle choices, recreational drugs, AIDS drugs, factor VIII, etc., etc. Disease is supposed to be something that attacks us from the outside. In fact, a diseased body is a body that has become acidic for whatever reason, through stress, through dehydration, through deoxygenation, through poor lifestyle choices. We need to be alkaline acid, acid-alkaline balance, slightly alkaline. But if you're acidic from acidic habits, and that can include acidic thoughts, then look at the list of symptoms. Headaches, sleepiness, confusion, loss of consciousness, coma, muscular acidity, seizures, weakness. So that could include, the heart is a muscle. That could be cardiac arrest, could be through acidity. Intestinal, diarrhea, respiratory, shortness of breath, coughing. Hello, hello, hello. Doesn't that sound like the alleged COVID symptoms? So it's just acidity. Heart acidity, arrhythmia, increased heart rate. I had that not long ago. I remedied it with magnesium phosphate and gastric acidity, nausea and vomiting. So all these so-called attacks, and we blame other people. We're around them and we blame them for being in their company, and we suffer all kinds of symptoms. It's all irrelevant. It's all nonsense. We need to take more responsibility, start purple pilling, and change our thought patterns, change our lifestyle choices, change our diets, exercise more, and more about that in another part of this series. Let's have a look at stress. Stress is related to heart disease, to asthma, to colds and flus, to cancer, to depression. It's also relevant and related and correlative to stomach ulcers, post-traumatic stress disorder, eczema, and other skin disorders. Stress must not be overlooked. Stress can be a good thing if it motivates you into action. What we're talking about really is mismanaged stress or stress overload. Stress overload can come in many forms. And one of the ways that we can become overloaded is to deny that we're stressed, is to not see where stress is coming from. If my body does not even cause me disease, and it doesn't, it simply registers disease. The disease comes from my poor lifestyle choices, from toxins coming into my mind, body, and soul from the outside. Toxins, not the disease itself, not the infection, the toxins. The toxins hit my body, hit my auric field, hit my entire being. And if I'm not detoxing regularly, if I'm not in a good place, if I'm not alkaline rather than acidic, then those toxins will take effect inside the body, cause my body to go into dis-ease, and therefore my body is not causing the dis-ease to me. It's simply telling me that I'm in a state of dis-ease. It's saving my life. If my body didn't do that, if my body didn't record it and shout from the hills, then I wouldn't take remedial action. And if I didn't take remedial action, my life expectancy would be very low. Now, if my body does not cause me disease and it simply shows the symptoms of a disease that's already been caused by some other agent, a toxin or stress or whatever, or deficiency, then how can my body cause you disease? Now we're undermining, where we are cancelling out the entire model of disease here. When we do that, we put a stop to the nonsense of bird flu coming down the pipeline, because those birds, when they are alleged to be in stress and sickness and flu, they're simply cooped up, thousands of birds in a pen that only houses a few hundred. So they are stressed, they're claustrophobic, they're suffering from the acute stress of being given poor food, poor environment, and they are sweating, their bodies are going into crisis. They're in crisis because their living conditions are just not good enough. That is the cause. The living conditions and the nutrition and the injections that they're given are causing them disease. They are not causing each other disease. And therefore, they cannot cause each other disease. They therefore cannot cause us disease. There's no such thing as zoonotic transmission. There's no such thing as human-to-human transmission. Transmission, as we'll look at in another part, is actually transportation. Disease has to be carried across various channels, vectors, if you like. Another question, are you aware of the full range and extent of traumatizing events? If we're talking about stress, stress comes, amongst other things, from trauma. Look at the traumatizing events that we are put through. We have pre-birth stress. Our mothers may be stressed. Our mothers may be toxic or deficient. We have medicalized birth in a hospital. A birth is not a medical event, it's a natural event. We have post-birth injections. In America now, they have over 70 injections for newborns. And that is a toxic overload that the newborn cannot cope with. We have preschool abandonment. If you survive the womb, if you survive birth from the womb, and if you survive your early years, you still then are faced with an abandonment in school. How do you know at the age of 4, 5, or 6, when you get dropped off in a hostile, foreign, alien environment? How do you know? How can you be sure that your parents will come back for you? That is intensely stress-making. It causes most children to go into trauma from which many never recover. And that sets them up for what's known as menticide, the killing of the human spirit, because they're already down by the time they get to school. It just makes them more vulnerable to attack and more vulnerable to something called Stockholm Syndrome, where they learn to regard the school and the school teacher as the new parent, because that parent is not deserting them like the natural parents did when they dropped them off. So it's an abandonment issue, and it's a rejection issue that many never recover from. And then in the school classroom environment, we have something called collective solitary confinement, which makes you feel as though you're in prison. You're in solitary confinement, but it's collective. It's solitary because you're not allowed to speak or relate to anyone. And it's collective because it's happening to all of us. And that's how it's accepted, because it's happening to all of us. We assume that it's okay, but it's not okay. It's normalized. The schooling environment and all those other forms of traumatizing are normalized events. They're not normal, they're not natural, but they've been normalized. As I've pointed out in other lectures, be wary of the difference between normalized and normal. The last thing I will say in this segment is that the vitamin K shot that they give at birth is in fact a black box injection. It comes with a black box warning, should not be given to newborns. So please do not let your newborns anywhere near a hospital. And if you do have to go into hospital, which I believe to be an unfortunate choice, then make sure that they are not confiscated temporarily under some false pretext and given an alleged vitamin K injection, which is actually very dangerous and may cause some infants to go into anaphylactic shock and maybe, just maybe, relevant to cot deaths. I can't say that with any certainty or authority. I'm just joining the dots in my own head. Please feel free to accept that idea or reject it according to your own thoughts and evidence. We'll leave it there now for part one. Thank you for tuning in to the People's Lawyer channel. Watch out for more videos coming shortly on the People's Lawyer channel and YouTube, the People's Lawyer channel on YouTube, and for talks across the country on building resilience and rolling out status correction as well, which I will discuss in future videos. Once again, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you very soon. Bye for now.